The Nikon Z30 is a complete game changer for full-frame mirrorless photographers in 2024, and here's why you need to own one. So let's jump right in and talk about it. What's up, y'all? It's Project Photography back with another video, and today, before we get started, make sure to follow all of my social down in the description bar below, including my brand new Patreon. But a lot of photographers have this major question of whether they should use a full frame camera like my Nikon Z6 or a crop sensor camera like this Nikon Z30 for all their photography needs. And as a professional photographer, I find myself using both. I have two Nikon Z6s in addition to my one Nikon Z30. And I think a lot of full frame Nikon Z photographers should get a Nikon Z30 in 2024. And I have three major reasons for it. So let's jump right into the first one. And it's because you can get access to a bunch of different focal lengths that a full frame camera may not be able to offer. With a aps-c size camera, we are gonna get a 1.5 times crop on all lenses that we're using. So for example, we can turn this 50mm 1.8S into essentially a 75mm when put on a Nikon Z30. You get to turn a lot of your full frame lenses into different focal lengths. And this is such a huge advantage, especially if you have a slew of already had full frame lenses. For me, all of my lenses are essentially full frame lenses except for the crop sensor 12-28. That is the only crop sensor lens I have, but it doesn't mean that I can't use my crop sensor camera with all my full frame lenses. So I want to kind of run through a few of my favorite lenses to use with the Nikon Z30 in particular. The first one I want to start off with is this 28mm f2.8. Now this paired with a Z30 is actually an incredible combo for a few reasons. We are able to turn that 28mm into a 40mm. It's the exact equivalent is a 42mm, but it's pretty much a 40mm. And if you just take a look at the size of this thing, it is absolutely tiny. And I think this is such a huge advantage with using a lens like the 28mm with the Nikon Z30. You have such an incredible compact lightweight setup, and you're able to get a totally different focal length. The 28mm is one of my favorite combinations. It's a combo that I just throw in my bag, not have to worry about it taking up too much space, and this is especially great for long days where we're walking around in the street. So one of my other favorite combinations to use with the Z30 is with the 50mm, and one focal length that I really enjoyed throughout a lot of my photography career was that 85mm. But for me, it just did not make sense to get an 85mm for this kit in particular. The main reason why is that I just felt like I really enjoyed the 50mm a lot. I mean, it's an S-line lens, an incredible focal length, paired especially with the full frame camera, but I really just didn't feel like it made sense to get an 85mm, which is where the Z30 plus the 50mm comes in. This turns this lens into about a 75mm lens, and that's really close to an 85. It's not exactly 85, but it's really close. It is a little bit tighter in focal length, and you can definitely feel that in a lot of your images. So the way you're gonna be attacking things is a little bit different. You're more isolating certain subject matters, opposed to trying to get a larger composition in the frame. If we go ahead and move on to our zoom lenses here, I have the 17-28 as one of my favorite pairings with the Z30. Now this turns it into a 25-42. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's kind of a weird focal length, like what scenarios will be using that for? For me, I use it a lot for video actually. I found that it's a really nice video setup, especially because the 17-28 is primarily used for video, but you're able to just get a really nice focal length from wide to standard. And I just found that's incredibly useful, especially with the 2.8 aperture. You're able to get a nice shallow depth of field that isn't like you're shooting with an f5.6 lens, for example. It's just a lot more pleasing to the eye. But in terms of my favorite zoom lens to use with the Z30 in terms of photography is the 24-200. Again, a major reason why I love using this lens, and I actually made an entire video with this combo, but the 24-200 is an incredible lens, even just with the Nikon Z6, you're able to get that nice wide angle to the nice telephoto. But with the Z30, this takes it an extra step further. This is my main lens for landscape photography. It's actually my main combo for landscape photography as my telephoto uses. And you're able to get essentially a 36-300. Now this is especially important on the long end. You're able to get that 300mm focal length, and that is a massive difference relative to a 200mm. So having access to these different focal lengths without having to grab more lenses is just such an integral part of having a Z30 with a full frame camera. So let's dive right into the next point. And as you guys know, I love being minimalistic. I love having gear that is lightweight, compact, small, But also not having a ton of gear is an important point when it comes to being a minimalistic photographer. By having a Z30 in complement to your full frame camera, you are able to be more minimalistic as a result. For example, if you wanted that 85mm and that 50mm, you would have to go out and buy an 85mm lens. But with the Z30, you don't have to worry about any of that. You get all those different focal lengths at a discounted rate because you're not buying more lenses. And the Z30 is only $500 used on eBay. It's not that expensive of a camera, but yet you're able to get so much more value because you're able to save on buying more gear and buy more lenses. If you're already an existing full frame mirrorless photographer and you have a whole slew of lenses, you don't need to go out and buy more lenses in order to just satisfy the Z30. In fact, it works more the other way around, how you're able to complement your kit because you have a Z30, a crop sensor camera, in addition to your full frame camera. Gives you just a bunch more different perspectives without having to go out and buy a bunch more different lenses. And to me, that is so incredibly important, especially when you're trying to keep your kit more minimalistic. This will generally help you save money in the long run because you're not going out and buying more lenses. It helps keep your kit smaller and gives you just access to more different unique focal lengths that you wouldn't have access to normally with just a full frame camera. Of course, there is crop sensor lenses for the Nikon Z system, but I'm gonna be quite honest with you, there isn't anything that the full frame lenses can't do for a crop sensor body like the Z30. Of course, you do have wide angles like the 12 to 28, but to be quite honest with you, I really feel like if you had a full frame kit, you don't need to go out and buy more lenses just to suit the Z30. And I really feel like this is especially beneficial for prime lenses in particular. Like imagine you can have a 35mm and instead of going out to buying a 50mm lens for your full frame camera, you're able to slap on that 35mm onto your Z30 and essentially just get a 50mm like that. You're able to just make a much more creative kit in terms of your lenses, and that's such a huge advantage when building out a kit specifically for your own use cases. If you think about it like this, by having a Nikon Z30, by buying this one camera body, you're able to double the amount of effective focal lengths that you have access to just because there's one $500 camera body. And the amount of value you're able to add to your kit is absolutely immense. Now let's talk about the last and final point. And this doesn't really have anything to do with the lenses in particular, but I really do think that the Nikon Z30 makes an incredible complement overall to a full frame camera because our full frame cameras will tend to be larger, heavier, bigger in size. But relative to something like a Nikon Z30, this is a lot more compact, a lot smaller, and has a lot of different use cases relative to a Z6. For example, if you're gonna pair something like a Z30 and a 28mm, this is a really easy pairing to just go around and throw in your camera bag without having to worry about it taking up too much weight. Like for me, I find myself just taking the Z30 and whatever lens that I want, throwing it into my P-Design 3-liter sling and not having to worry about it taking up so much space. My sling can stay nice and compact, and I can throw other things in there like my sunglasses, batteries, chapstick, keys, and so forth, and it's just able to make a really nice everyday setup. And because the Z30 is so small and so compact, you're able to just throw it into your camera bag in addition to your Z6 when you're out and traveling, for example. And you can take out your Z30 on your travel days where you're just going to be walking the entire time, but you don't have to have the best gear possible. You can be on those more lower leverage shoots. And most of the time, those are the kind of shoots that I'm going to be using my Nikon Z30 for. Those more lower leverage shoots where I'm not worried about getting the best images possible, but I also want to bring something that's not going to take up a ton of weight and a ton of space that I can just go out and enjoy taking photos with. That's exactly what this Nikon Z30 is for. You're not gonna be using it on professional shoots, unless for me, I use it for landscape photography. And on top of it, the Nikon Z30 controls are nearly identical to majority of the full frame cameras that Nikon offers. And this just makes it so much easier to slot into your workflow without having to change or rethink about how you're gonna use your camera. You can switch between your full frame and your Z30 essentially seamlessly. And to me, that's huge, especially being in the same ecosystem. So yeah, guys, now let's jump right into the conclusion and who I really think should get a Nikon Z30 in 2024. I think getting a Z30 is especially useful for photographers that have essentially a full frame camera kit, but they want something to complement them as a second body, but want it to be cheaper. Really think the Z30 just hits a lot of the different points that full frame cameras will not. On top of it, you're able to double the available focal lengths you have available to you, turn your 28mm into your 40mm, get extra reach on a lens like a 24 to 200. At the end of the day, Having this camera is only $500 will save you money because you're able to double the amount of available focal lengths without having to actually go out and buy more lenses. I mean, if you think about it, an 85mm is the exact same price of a Z30, but yet this is gonna provide you more value in the long run. This is just great as a lightweight, everyday camera body that you can just throw in your bag without having to worry about it for those really low leverage shoots. So I really am a fan of the Nikon Z30, especially in 2024. Nikon has not come out with a better crop sensor body. I mean, you do have the Nikon Z50, but I really think the Z30 is a better camera overall in terms of its autofocus, in terms of its handling, in terms of its build and so forth. So big fan of the Z30, and I hope you guys are too. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today. And I do have my Patreon fully up now, and I'm gonna be giving full bonus content every single week for you guys. So the first video that I do have up is of me going out and editing my last shoot. I went up to the Los Angeles National Forest and I shot some amazing images that I can't wait to share with you guys. But if you want to see the full video of me editing those photos, go ahead and check it out in the description bar below or up here on the top right hand corner. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today. Please feel free to rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.